Class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a fun day. What a fun day again today was, as watching the Trump crowd kind of flirt with throwing him under the bus as more comes out around the January 6th committee hearings, as more information, as more awakening, as more people are paying attention. Again, the Jim Jordan frame, nobody's watching. I think a lot of people are watching, especially that segment of the population that really never pays attention. I think now kind of piqued their interest. When you go, we almost had a constitutional crisis. Democracy almost over. Now, the fun in this is watching the inner circle, the very best people. Remember, the folks who surrounded Trump throw him under the bus, and one of those very interesting names, this Amy Kramer. She was one of the January 6th rally organizers. She co-founded the group Women for Trump. The grabber by the you-know-what people. The people who wore the shirt with the arrow pointing south going, grab me here, Mr. Trump. Pushing back against the, his statements. Evidently, she's not happy about what happened in Alabama. She wanted, she wanted Mo Brooks. And the president endorsed someone else. And so she came out very, very forcefully, very angrily, as reported over at Politico. She said Donald Trump is disconnected from the base. And I'm going, hold on a second. Was he ever really part of the base? Did you ever see him pull up in his limo to the barbecue roast? Did you ever see him show up to the trailer park in his no? She goes on to say it's time for those of us in the movement to get back to basics, back to our first principles. I have no idea what those are. She says we were here long before President Trump came along, and we're going to be here long afterward. Yep, that's what she said. And what's interesting is you knew this was going to happen eventually. You knew that once you let the genie out of the bottle, that they're going to go even further to the extreme because, well, this is what happens with extremist movements. I don't know what the first principles are. And maybe that's. I would love someone to explain the first principle of MAGA-ism, and what it's going to look like once Trump is no longer there. Because understand, Trump has no core values. This is the part that I've been talking about from the beginning, from 2015. There's no core value here. The only core value, if there is one, is loyalty to Trump. It's all about him. It's feeding his narcissism. It's feeding his self-centeredness. And look, these hearings have really highlighted that. It's all about him. It's all about his crowd size, his hand size. It's all about that. It has nothing to do with policy. It has nothing to do about making lives better. It has nothing about first principles. What is she talking about? Now, I do find it interesting. Again, this is one of those moments where you look at how quickly people are going to start bailing on him. Dr. Oz, our TV shill of a doctor, Senate candidate here in Pennsylvania. Interesting how married up to Trump during the primary, got squeaked by in the primary. Now the candidate now running from Trump, shifting the messaging away from Trump, moving away because I think he's reading the tea leaves. When 60% of the country is saying, you know what? I think he did something. We should be holding him accountable for the crimes that were committed on January 6th. Now, look, there are still a couple of the people who bought the hat and still have the T-shirt and still are flying the flag. Their numbers are dwindling, but they're still out there who say, oh, it's all a hoax. The majority of people, when 60% of the country agree that maybe we should be holding somebody accountable, that's to steal a Joe Biden line. That's a BFD. Kind of a big blanking deal. And it's going to get bigger, especially as these hearings continue. And there's one going to happen on Thursday. And now I guess they're going to push the other ones off because now new information, more people coming out of the woodworks, more people going, hey, that guy that demanded my loyalty, not repaying that loyalty. So more people saving their skin, more rats jumping off the ship. Interesting moments. Now, speaking of rats, you look at the Tuesday hearing, and Rusty Bauer, the Arizona speaker, everyone was, oh my gosh, he's a hero. And look, yesterday we talked about it here on the program. He did. Look, he came out, he told the truth. He was very emotional. He was very authentic. It was good stuff. And I said yesterday, I said, look, the reality is he did the right thing at the right time. He did what he was supposed to do. He upheld his oath. But no points. No points. This is not a great guy. He told the story about how he was being, just being harassed and being pushed and all the stuff that came out of this. And today, this is the brilliant part of this. Today he says if Trump's the nominee, and if it was up against Biden, he'd vote for Trump again. I mean, Can you do that again? This is the kind of stuff that's quite remarkable to me. But it's the world that we now find ourselves. That again, it's back to this ideology over sanity. And it's going to be interesting to see where these committee hearings go over the next couple of weeks. Like I said, they're going to push the last two off into July because, like I said, more information coming. But going to be interesting. Now, the committee is ramping up security for members because, of course, the amount of threats and intimidation being pointed at those lawmakers being ramped up. Now, I don't know why you're going after the lawmakers who are just sitting on the committee, letting the very best people testify, but this is where we are. Let's go to the phones. We've got CJ on line 1 from Madison, Wisconsin. CJ, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm one of those mega Trumpers, Rick.
Hit me.
I am one of the mega Trumpers for the policies that kept us with a secure border and inflation not at 8.6% or 239,000 just last month of illegal, undocumented people coming across the borders. So no matter what happens to Trump, and you guys can fantasize about what you're going to do to him, but November is coming, and I tell you what, you're going to be just amazed at the amount of people that miss his policies because you guys won, and we're living in a Democrat economy. We're living in a Democrat world right now where Russia never invaded Ukraine when Donald Trump was president. And he didn't.
Yeah, he didn't need to because he didn't need to because he was Putin's puppet. So what's your point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My point is that we're living in your president, your nominee, your candidate, and he's a disaster.
Yeah, he's
and
our
no
president.
No matter what happens to Trump, we got the red wave coming because we want our country back as your party's destroying it by everything that you want to just look the other way
Nobody's looking the other way, CJ. Nobody's looking the other way. There are very real problems. And Joe Biden was left with a ton of problems left by Trump. There was nobody at the wheel for months. And one of the things that we're finding out because of this committee is that there was nobody doing anything the last several months of the Trump administration because he was fixated on his reelection campaign, fixated on rigging the election, fixated on fantasy. So when you say that he has all these great policies, it's just not there, CJ. Yeah, okay, we can have the hate and division and the kind of stuff, the angry stuff that you want to go after, but the reality is he did not do great things for this economy. He inherited a good economy, and he ruined it. One of only two presidents to have massive job losses. So, yeah, we're going to have the Trump economy back, CJ. I appreciate the call, man.
During the pandemic work.
Yeah, thanks, CJ. I appreciate it. Good talking with you. But this is one of those things. We can fantasize about what is, and the Democrats are going to get beaten and all this stuff. Yeah, look, inflation is hurting. It's true. But when Biden took office, the reality of the moment, when Biden took office, he inherited a massive, and this is what happens to Democrats a lot. And I don't defend them very often. Some of their policies suck. But, this is what happens. They inherit a massive mess. When Biden took office, there was no transition because, Trump didn't concede or help move along the transition of power. The country was in chaos. We were losing jobs. We were in just a mess. And yet here you've got guys like CJ going, no, it's all Democrat policies. And you've got an obstructionist Republican Party who will move nothing along. For instance, I look at someone like Marjorie Trainwreck Green, who first one out there pointing fingers. The baby formula. Voted against the infant formula supplemental appropriations act. Voted against doing anything to help actually fix the policy, the problem. Yet we did nothing to address what really is the problem, which is mass consolidation, which is, you could argue, Trump's tariff on getting formula into the country, which actually I supported. You could argue a lot of things, but there's no help from the other side. And my problem is we live in a country right now where, depending on which side you've bought the hat, you're rooting for one person or the other. And I'm not that guy. I wanted Trump to succeed. You never heard me say, I hope he fails. I supported policies that I thought would be helpful for us. And I was against the things that I thought were bad. Same thing with Biden. The things that I think are good, are positive, I'm all in favor of. We've got to get out of this mindset that I'm on team red or team blue or I bought this hat or that hat, or I'm loyal to this guy. I am on nobody's team 100% of the time. And this is the stuff that drives me insane. I'm 100% this guy. Well, you've just shown me how stupid you can be. Most certainly scary, scary times. And the frightening part of this is it's going to get worse before it gets any better. Because the people who have bought the flags and the hats and they're going to be angry. And look, every one of the people I know who have the MAGA hats, some of the most angry people I've known. And using this inflation that is global. And I love how it's all Joe Biden's fault. Joe Biden did the inflation. It's global. And we're not even seeing the worst of it. That's the part that's incredible to me. And I guess it shows how short-sighted we as Americans can be. And we come back and talk a little bit more about Rick Scott. And we'll maybe get a thought about what Rick Scott thinks, the Republican senator from Florida, what he thinks of Americans and what his ideas on how we solve the future and what policies our good friends in the GOP will bring us when and if they win in November. Because I know there are some folks who are hoping we're going to bring back those Republican policies that were so great for the working class. What could those policies be? When we come back and talk a little bit about that, also love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Back after this. Stick around.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Rick Scott, the senator from Florida, said that Americans are the most spoiled people on earth. That's right, you're spoiled. You're spoiled. You expect $2 a gallon gas. You expect food. You expect housing. You expect jobs, safety. You expect stuff. Social Security when you get old. Social safety net that they've been destroying for years. You know, those great Republican policies of hooray, you're on your own, brother. Yeah, that's what they're going to bring. And understand, Rick Scott, honest, I give him credit. I give Scott credit, honest, that he came out with his policy, which is to destroy every federal program every 5 years, and maybe possibly some of them will come back. So all you folks who are depending on Social Security to be there in your retirement and old age, they've been wanting to gut that from the beginning. All the folks who think Medicare is going to be around for you, they want to gut that. They've been wanting that for decades. There's nothing new there. That's what they're going to get you. They're going to raise taxes on the working class, and for all my working class Republicans who go, no, they're going to fight for me. Yeah, they're going to fight to take from you so that they can give to people like Rick Scott. Now, the president has come out and called for a 3-month federal gas holiday on the federal gas tax. I said months ago this is what should have happened when he came out with we're going to release a bunch of oil from the strategic reserve. I know this doesn't help or work, but symbolically it shows, hey, we're trying. It's a political move more than it's an economic move. It's going to put a couple of pennies into people's pockets. It's a show of something. Our problem really is we use too much. There's too much. We're using too much, or there's not enough capacity. So either we've got to consume less, or we've got to produce more. There are more leases out there. Companies aren't drilling. Do we need more refining capacity? Yeah, but the question is this a direction we should be going? We can't have that conversation in this day and age. Let's quick go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line too. Alice, how are we doing today?
Well, I'm not crazy, at least. So, anyways, what I wanted to say was, your previous caller is a perfect example of the MAGA movement. They're ignorant of the entire world that's going on because they don't realize, because, of course, they listen to Fox News and OAN, so they just think that this stuff's going on here in the United States. Because, they live in this little fantasy world, and it's reinforced by the whack jobs over at Fox and OAN and Newsmax. And the second thing is, a perfect example, hate. Hate and anger. Well, the rest of us are just trying to get along, but these old MAGA folks, boy, they just want their little fantasy world. And as for Rick Scott and his nonsense, don't you just love how they come right out and tell them what they're going to do, and they still run and go, yeah, that's my man. That's it. I don't want no Medicare. I don't want no Social Security. I'll just die along the street. They're all nuts. But you have a good evening, Rick.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. No, I mean, like I said, I give Rick Scott credit. He's honest. He's telling you what he's going to do. So when they get it, when they do it, don't be shocked. Don't be surprised by sadly what is going to come out of this. Now on the gas holiday front, it's going to be a couple of cents, which I got to tell you, I think is just going to be absorbed by the companies, and it's going to go into their pockets. We probably won't see a lot of it, but again, like I said, I think it's partially political. Now this is kind of the moment that had 30 years ago we've been moving away from using so much fossil fuel and going in other directions. Yeah, we'd be in a better place. But we can't do those things politically because, well, we're mired in this my team, your team thing. And it's crazy. Do we need more refining capacity? Yeah, because right now, evidently, the refineries are at capacity. So they're claiming, the oil company's claiming, we can't produce anymore. Do I believe that? I don't know. I don't know that I believe it or not. I believe nothing coming out of corporate America these days. What I do know is they're wildly profitable. They're making huge, enormous amounts of money. And is that a bad thing? Well, I would argue in a moment of high inflation, I would argue gouging is something that should be looked at. Because we were told, competition is supposed to lower prices. But when they've got a commodity that you have to have, and it's an input into everything that we do, into all of our products, food and energy or food and transportation and everything in manufacturing and everything we do, they got you by the short hair, man. And they know it. So this again is one of those moments, and I've been calling this for decades. We need a Manhattan project kind of mentality on getting us energy independent and other energy sources. How hard is this? And why does it take crisis to make us go, maybe we should be doing this stuff? Now, what's going to be interesting, and here's where the sad reality is. Democrats are probably going to take a beating in November. Republicans will probably take the House, maybe not the Senate. And we're going to have a divided government for 2 years, which means nothing is going to get done. 2024 is going to come around, and we're going to have more infighting, more of this division. And this is the reality of our system, how broken we are. It's us. Again, I don't blame our political leaders anymore. I blame us because we're broken. We can't seem to agree on a direction on where we want to go. For the next couple of years, nothing's going to get done. And we're going to continue to get angrier and angrier and more divided and more divisive. And corporate America is going to continue to do very well, thank you very much. And that's by design, I believe. I keep saying that, we're pitted against each other, right, left. We're pitted against each other, male, female. We're pitted against each other, black, white. We're pitted against each other in all of these division spaces. We're deliberately sliced and diced and segmented off so that we can eat each other. When the real fight is not right, left, or any of those things. It's top down. It's the moneyed interest versus the rest of us. The communities across this country that are broken because corporate America made these decisions and pushed for policies that allowed them to do it. How about we start talking about that? How about we start fighting to get a seat at those tables? Just my thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. When we come back, Jared Yates Sexton is going to be here to share some thoughts on the January 6th hearings, what's going on in Georgia, and, well, whatever else we can bang around. Quick break, right back.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1999. That was the day 5,000 textile workers at 6 Fieldcrest Cannon Mills in North Carolina began voting for representation by the Union of Needle Trades, Industrial, and Textile Employees, better known as Unite. The victory, later validated by the NLRB, was a significant win for labor in the anti-union South. The union's organizing director, Bruce Ronner, stated, quote, "It feels like we just organized GM. Suddenly, we've got a beacon to show other textile workers that they can do it. Labor historian Leon Fink noted that, quote, "It's a stunning victory for the union. It's the biggest breakthrough in a traditional Southern industry for probably the last quarter century." Then AFL-CIO President John Sweeney remarked that it was the largest union victory in a Southern textile mill in history. The election and victory came after 25 years of struggle and 4 previous attempts to organize at Fieldcrest Cannon Mills. Many noted that the young immigrant workforce made the difference. Conditions had been worsening at the mills. Workers, fed up with production line speed up, punitive decreases in piecework premiums, and company harassment, were compelled to vote union. One worker stated that he and many others were sick of lies management told to keep workers from voting yes in previous elections. Supervisors routinely intimidated workers to vote no with promises of higher wages, or when that failed, threats of deportation. Workers were barraged with various forms of anti-union propaganda. They found anti-union videos mailed to their homes. Some were paid extra to distribute Vote No t-shirts on the shop floor. The company finally recognized the union and negotiated a first contract that guaranteed higher wages, pensions, and other benefits.
I never dreamed of growing up to be a political activist commentator, but here I am, and it worked out pretty well for me. I've been lucky enough to have a voice in public matters and eke out a modest living running my mouth as an independent populist agitator. Still, I have to confess to the sin of job envy, not in the sense of being resentful, but regretful about my own inability to lift the trade of journalistic commentary to the heights attained by a small, feisty collection of unique public opinionators, political cartoonists. In framing issues and rallying people to think and act, these journalists have an unfair advantage over us mere word crafters. They can literally draw a picture to make their point. They reach masses viscerally as well as cerebrally, and visceral usually outpunches cerebral. Editorial cartooning is a profession made up largely of progressive mavericks who enter the social, political, cultural fray with an abundance of anti-establishment audacity, an eye for irony, fondness for the underdog, and an ability to laugh at absurdity, plus artistic talent. Because cartooning is an expression of the human spirit that's been irrepressible since cave drawings, generation after generation of pen and ink champions of democracy blossomed. The general public's appreciation and demand for the cartoonist's unblinking honesty and satire have never flagged, even increasing whenever the artists come under public assault by autocrats, plutocrats, screwballs, and assorted other censors. These graphic editorial artists matter. Again and again, they've roused the public to rise up and put down corporate and political scoundrels, incrementally advancing our nation's democratic possibilities. As in the natural world, though, even the most beneficial creatures can be driven to extinction. This is Jim Hightower saying, check your own local newspaper. Are your favorite cartoonists still there?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So still spending a lot of time thinking about the hearing on Tuesday and the voices that came out of that. And like I said, I think Tuesday's hearings were the most compelling, the most jaw-dropping. Again, like I've been saying, these are the best people. These are the people who surrounded the Trump sphere. And what I'm most taken by is how the MAGA sphere has just kind of just ignored this. It's always something else. There's always a justification for what is an insurrection, what is sedition, what was. If you watch these hearings, the plan, the plot, the scheme, overturn the election, steal the election. I'm literally amazed at the level of justification. But here to share some thoughts on, well, what came out on Tuesday and maybe where this goes, I've asked our good friend Jared Yates Sexton to come talk with us. Jared's an author, political analyst, and host of the Muckrake podcast. Make sure you check out that podcast. Also his book, American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. Jared, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thanks for having me, buddy.
So let's talk about the big hearing there. Are you surprised by what came out? I mean, for me, Tuesday's hearing, by far the most compelling in that you heard from the very best people saying the very worst things.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think I've lacked my ability to be surprised by any of this at this point. I mean, literally, there's nothing that could come out about what Trump or any of his cronies said, did, tried to do at this point that would actually shock me. I mean, to be honest, they have him dead to rights. And what surprises me more is sort of the framing around this thing, how it's being handled, what's being done with it. I mean, at this point, we are sort of drowning in proof that there was an attempted coup in this country. And the fact that it even has to keep going forward, the argument has to be made that he should be held accountable or any of these people should be held accountable. There's a lot of disturbing stuff around this, but I have to tell you, I'm no longer surprised by anything that comes out about any of them.
No, and look, truth of the matter is I never thought I was going to be surprised because, you know, like you, I've been following this from the beginning and my expectations very low, but to hear these people under oath and to hear them come out and tell the truth while, you know, simultaneously in public saying a whole bunch of other things, that to me was kind of, you know, I guess kind of shocking in that they still have some honor and some fealty to the rule of law, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be careful how you throw around the word honor, but, you know, but in all of this, you know, it goes back on January 6th. We've seen these texts, of course, that came from people like Sean Hannity, even Donald Trump Jr., who behind the scenes were saying, you know, we have to do something about this. We have to stop this thing, please. Like, this is wrong. And then immediately went on the air, defended it, and basically tried to give Donald Trump any sort of excuse for what he did. The people around him knew that he lost. Donald Trump, I have to tell you, the one thing that comes out of this is I don't ever know if I can tell you what is in Donald Trump's psyche, whether or not he knew or didn't know or it convinced him. I mean, a chronic serial liar like somebody like this, you never specifically know where their mind is, but the people around him knew full and well that he had lost and that they were committing crimes, which makes this entire thing even more infuriating, which is that there was a conspiracy to overthrow the government of the United States of America. And now we want to play this tap dancing game about who knew what and when and whether or not there was an intentional crime. But I mean, these are full-blown criminals. There's no other way to.
And now you have the sycophants, the MAGA world, who are justifying it and now trying to poo-poo it all off by saying, well, no, it was all about his policies and we, you know, and we're going to push back. And you go, well, what policies? And we're taking our country back. In fact, just had a caller say, we're taking our country back. And you go, well, where?
Yeah, and you know, the thing about the Donald Trump presidency, and anybody who paid attention knew this, there was a lot of talk about, you know, giving the country back to the workers or the American people. And meanwhile, what happened during his presidency? The richest of the rich made $1 trillion over a 4-year period. The only major accomplishment legislatively that anybody can point to was a tax cut that was disastrous and redistributed wealth from the bottom up. I mean, everything they said was a lie. At this point, it is a cult. It is a group of people who identify with Donald Trump. They identify themselves as Trump supporters. And I think it also is evidence of the fact that when you are part of a cult like this, you're willing to suffer or endorse anything, including, again, a coup to overthrow the presidency and the government of the United States.
But we kept the immigrants out.
Well, that was never even actually a purpose of Donald Trump, because as we know, there's nothing better for these people than to bring immigrants in and exploit them. You know, the cruelty was all performative, and the way that Donald Trump's presidency worked and the people around him, it's a big giant pageant. That's what it's always been. It's a lot of rhetoric, a lot of empty promises, and a lot of empty concerns. I mean, we all know this, that it's one thing on one side and then it's professional wrestling on the other.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's all professional wrestling on the other. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Jared Yates Sexton, author, political analyst, host of the Muck Rake podcast. Make sure you check that out. Also, his book, American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Now, I want to talk about your state of Georgia because, you know, clearly you ended up having your Secretary of State as one of the folks who, you know, got a little airtime there. Hero, guy just doing his job. Where do you put him?
Well, first of all, anytime somebody says, let's talk about your state of Georgia, I'm always like, do we have to? I mean, really, being ground zero for all of this stuff, it's just terrible. No, the thing with Raffensperger is, in one way, this is a person who got on a phone call with Donald Trump, who tried to pressure him into overturning a rightful election. And on that, you have to commend them. But like Mike Pence, I mean, the rot goes so deep. Raffensperger, running in this primary, basically went ahead and defended Donald Trump and, tried to tie himself to his leg, which is, Mike Pence basically at this point has made his entire platform. You know what? Maybe I should have been hung. I don't know. That's really who these people are. On one hand, they can have these moments of quote unquote courage, but on the other hand, I mean, it's a group of just absolutely dribbling sycophants who are in a movement, and they know that their only chance of power is to hold on to that leg, regardless of, even if people are breaking into your house and threatening to kill you.
Yeah, but Trump says he won by 400,000 votes in your state of Florida, but only wanted 11,800.
I say I can fly, and it'd be a problem if I jumped out the window. I mean, really, in all of this, it's a really problematic thing. You look back, I always tell people, if you want to know anything about Donald Trump and these stolen elections, look back in 2016, where he said that exactly 3 million people had fraudulently voted. And that was the number that he lost the popular vote by. I mean, this is a guy who engages in the worst kind of toxic self-fulfillment fantasies. And in all of this stuff, it is literally just a cover story to give him what he wants. In terms of trying to overthrow the election, I mean, literally, he could have made up any fantasy, any big lie that he wanted to. It was all about power all along.
So the question now becomes, out of this, does any of this matter? I mean, is this going to actually turn into anything? Will we actually hold anybody accountable? Because I think what you have is, I think you have people who are in their camps. Who, depending on which hat you bought, you're going to be in your camp. And it will come down to that 5-6% in the middle who are usually the least informed, the least active, the least educated, the least concerned, who are maybe in this moment paying attention. Do you think it's going to matter?
Well, a lot of what's disturbed me about this entire thing is what has been the purpose. What is the rhetorical point of the hearings? And, in one part, you can argue it's trying to get Merrick Garland's attention, but I don't know what's going to get his attention at this point. We've seen one leak after another from the Department of Justice that they probably don't have any hands left from ringing them. I don't know if they're going to be held responsible. A lot of this is going towards the midterms, but also a lot of it through Liz Cheney, Mike Pence, a lot of these people, and even the commentariat at the United States. You're seeing a lot of people who are trying to launder the Republican Party. They're saying this isn't a GOP problem. This is a Donald Trump party problem. This isn't about the donors who funded this and organized this. It's about Donald Trump. He's the problem. What this is going to turn into, I'm not entirely sure, but I do know that I have lived in America long enough to watch a lot of very wealthy, white, powerful men escape consequences of their actions. So I'm not exactly holding my breath, but I'm really hoping something good comes out of it.
You bring up the thing that I've hit on from day one. I want to know the moneyed interest. I want to know who funded it. I want to know who's behind it. I want to know who planned it. I'm not concerned about the people who defecated on the floor or urinated on the desks or broke the windows so much. I want to know who the money behind the curtain is, the people who benefited from all of this. Look, Trump's part of it. Yes, I want him held accountable. Sure, but it's that cabal of cash that created this. All of these groups, all of these extremist groups, all of the funding that flows into that. That's where I think we need to spend our time spending more effort digging into.
Yeah, I want to make this very clear. The January 6th hearings have completely dodged any mention of this. Sheldon Whitehouse, before they started, basically sounded the alarm that it was not going to go there. Meanwhile, the same people who paid for and organized January 6th are the same right-wing donors who continually go after organized labor, they go after public education, and have more or less bought the government of the country and basically control things from behind the scenes. If we do not deal with them, not only will this happen again, but this erosion of democracy and rights and human dignity is going to continue. Those are the people that we definitely need to pull the curtain back from, show who they are, and install what they're doing, because otherwise it's going to continue.
And this is why I keep coming back to this frame, because I have a lot of MAGA people who want to fight on the right-left frame. They want to divide, they want to divide because we're equals. They want to divide us in the working class. And I go, no, it's not right, left. It's not male, female. It's not black, white. It's not gay, straight. It's none of those things. It's top down. It's the moneyed interest versus everyone else. It's the old John Edwards frame of two Americas. It's theirs against us, or the Occupy Wall Street, the 99% versus the 1%, and in this case, the 1% of 1%. That's the frame we need to be talking about, and they've gone nowhere near it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a reason, and it's because most of the people, including the Democrats on that committee, are funded by a lot of the same people, or they don't want their donors to be exposed. It's a consensus in Washington, D.C. You stay away from the donor class. You don't mention them. You don't talk about what they're doing behind the scenes or the actions that they're carrying out. In all of this, we have a group of people who have incredible concentrated wealth who are spreading conspiracy theories. And the conspiracy theories are always focused on taking the brunt of the blame away from them and putting it on marginalized communities. And what's that do? It divides us. It makes sure that we make less money. We have no chance at putting together a populist coalition. And it's all about taking the spotlight off of them. And again, this is a situation. January 6th was a major case in which a group of wealthy donors tried to overthrow the government. And we're not talking about that. And that's where all this should lead, but it unfortunately isn't.
Any hope of that? Any hope that turns, maybe, that there's a chance there's maybe another hearing, maybe somewhere?
I don't see it in the hearings. I'll tell you the truth, and I think you and I come from a similar background. It's going to take a grassroots, bottom-up approach to make this happen. It's going to take a progressive movement. It's going to take organized labor. Every time that I see a new shop is being opened up, every time there's a Starbucks or an Apple store or an Amazon warehouse that gets organized, it starts to take shape that a lot of people are coming together. Even if they're Democrat, Republican, you name it, doesn't matter who they are, where they're from, they start to realize that the game is exactly as you put it. It's top down, and it always has been. And this stuff that divides us keeps us from recognizing it. But I do have hope we'll get there. I mean, literally, we have to. It's become way too obvious. The game is way too obvious at this point for more people not to pick up on it.
So how do we make that shift then? Because we've been put into these boxes. And I would argue we've put ourselves in these boxes. And I'll argue I'm part of that in that as well. How do we move beyond that? I'm on this team, or this is my flag, or how do you move beyond that? Because you're right, we have to figure out how to build that coalition of worker power to address these situations. How do you get past that then?
Well, I think it's all organizing and solidarity. The only thing that you can do in a time like this is to learn to trust other people and rely on other people, because obviously we're being told lies, conspiracy theories are being peddled left and right. The only way that we can actually make any sort of a change is for a massive sea change of a movement. And we've been told all along that's impossible. We're too scattered, we're too atomized. But I have to tell you, the more that this stuff starts to pick up momentum, the more hope that I have that we can start to do that. Because again, and I don't want to be dramatic here, but it's true, we really have no choice. Everything from climate change to corruption in government, big money taking over representative politics. Literally, we have no alternative besides building a bottom-up, grassroots, people-led movement that takes on corruption and money.
Yeah, I'm sharing your hope, just not your optimism.
No, I agree. And by the way, that's the other thing about it. I know that having a bunch of soaring rhetoric and talking about, no, guys, we can really do this thing, it doesn't make it happen. I will say, and I know that you've been on the political scene for long enough and observed it for long enough that you know this as well. This can't be a spectator thing anymore. This can't be us watching politics on TV. I mean, I have a podcast and media, and you have your media. Like, I know we're talking about this, and we want people to listen, and we want people to watch. But people can't just turn on CNN and MSNBC and hope that their heroes are going to make it better. Like, we have to get involved everywhere from local all the way up to national. And it's going to take a lot of work. It is not going to be easy. It really, truly isn't.
Yeah, and it means pushing back on those crazy conspiracies and having the conversations around them. Wow, going to be interesting times ahead.
Well, I mean, listen, interesting times. I love that you had to throw that in there. But it's about pointing out who uses these conspiracy theories, who weaponizes them, and what is the purpose. And the purpose is to throw people off the scent of the people who are profiting off of this exploitation and this oppression.
I'm with you. That's what we got. Let me last question I've got for you. Another hearing coming up on Thursday. What are the expectations there? More of the same kind of directing everything at Trump and his sphere. What are you expecting? What's the game plan, you think?
Well, my understanding is there's going to be a recess for a while. And listen, I love a cliffhanger as much as anybody. We need to get into some more of the big bombshells that are coming through. We need to see some more people with criminal intent. I have to imagine that after tomorrow, particularly, I mean, this is going to be possibly going up against for attention against the the downfall of Roe v. Wade. I mean, like, this is going to need to be something that comes with a lot of thunder, and it comes with a big bombshell sort of piece of information. I hope they have it. I hope they have something that will keep people talking about this and keep the attention of it, because right now it's an opportunity. These people have to be held accountable. I'm really hoping they're able to at least start something.
That is the hope. But Jared, I appreciate the time as always. Amazing stuff. Appreciate you taking time for us. I hope folks will check out the podcast, the Muckrake podcast. We'll get links out on social media. Also the book, American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World and Failed Its People. Great stuff, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our good friend Jared Yates Sexton. Make sure you check out the podcast and the book. We'll get links out on how you can do that. We'll take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. You got thoughts? You got questions? I want to hear it. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Right back after this.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1969. That was the day that the Cuyahoga River, which winds its way through Cleveland, Ohio, caught on fire. Cleveland was once the 6th largest city in the nation. During the early 20th century, the city had a booming steel industry. Clevelander John D. Rockefeller made the city a leader in oil refining. But after World War II, industries left strong Union cities like Cleveland and Detroit. These jobs moved south and overseas, where wealthy industrialists could exploit workers in markets with weak labor protections. As a result, Cleveland fell on hard times. During the 1960s, the city lost 150,000 residents. As jobs left town, so did the workers. The once proud factories that lined the banks of the Cuyahoga River had brought jobs to the city, but they also pumped pollution into the waterway. When a passing train put off sparks, the river oozing with oil and debris caught fire. It was not the first time that the river ignited. Time magazine posted dramatic photos of the burning river, although the photos were actually from an earlier blaze. The pictures helped to fuel the growing environmental movement. They gave momentum to the passage of the Clean Water Act. The Cuyahoga was not the only urban river impacted by industry. The Time article described how, quote, Omaha's meat packers filled the Missouri River with animal grease balls as big as oranges. Today, one of Cleveland's breweries sells a popular Burning River Pale Ale. The Burning River is part of the history and the folklore of the city.
Burn on, big river, burn on. Burn on, big river.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So evidently Susan Collins is going to be selling her house. Put her house in Maine up for sale. I guess she's looking for something a little smaller. Something a little smaller. Looking for something with a little more space. Something with less sidewalks, because she didn't want people writing messages on her sidewalk in chalk. Because you may remember that there were some activists who showed up at her house and said, "Hey, Susan, we'd like you to support this piece of legislation to make sure that abortion rights are protected for women." And she called the police, and the police came out and said, "No, there's no threat here." But they did call the Department of Public Works, and they cleaned her sidewalk. Evidently, she couldn't wait for it to rain. But now she's looking for a little more space, wants to get away from people. and protect her beloved sidewalks. Now, here's the thing. The days are ticking down until the expected road decision, and I'm personally, I think it's going to be the last day of the term, the end of June, as the Supreme Court justices flee Washington D.C. because this is going to be contentious. This is going to be one of those moments that I don't think a lot of people thought would ever come. This is something that Republicans have been saying for a very long time. The dog's been chasing the car for a long time. It's now finally gonna catch the car. The question is it gonna chew the tires off the car and chew through the side? And the answer is yes. This is what I've been saying for years. When Republicans tell you they're going to do something, they're going to do it. Where I live in Pennsylvania, understand the guy who's running for governor here is going to pass right to work. This will be a no rights at work state, much like other states across this country who have lower standards of living, have lower wages, have less health care benefits, have lower retirement security, and much more dangerous workplaces. That's the future here, and it's going to happen if he's elected. Rick Scott has said, if we take power, we're going to move forward on an agenda to go after Social Security, to go after Medicare. Lindsey Graham has said, we've got to go after entitlements. That means lower cost of living adjustments at the minimum. That means they're going to attack those programs that help working class people. They've told you that. And again, this is where I keep coming back to these policies and these ideas that we should be organizing around. But we get caught up in these, my team. I vote for Democrats because, well, the other side is that bad. Do I think the Democrats are perfect? No. I think they're really bad at messaging for working class people and have been for a very long time. And I've said that for years. There's nothing new here for me. And I work to make them better because at least they're movable. At least we can get them to go, oh yeah, we should have labor rights. Oh yeah, we should take care of children. Oh yeah, we should help Granny put food on the table. Oh yeah, we should help with prescription drug prices. Oh yeah, we should help with energy price. Oh yeah, we should do things. We should use government in a way that makes people's lives better instead of using it to make people's lives worse. Fundamental difference. And this is the moment that we're kind of in. And I like when Jared talks about, hey, we need to do the hard work of grassroots organizing, which is why, again, I talk about all the time, on election night 2020, while the country was, figuring out who the next president was going to be, counting votes, I was leading a strike of 55 workers against a multinational corporation in the area, of the majority of which, voted for Trump. Because their fight was the righteous one. Their fight was the right one, fighting corporate greed, fighting for better lives, fighting for better opportunities for their families. This is where we should be at. Not defending someone who is despicable. Not defending a corrupt system that has, and look, Jared's right. What we've been presented, while horrible and damning and jaw-dropping and incredible, still is protecting the elites, the moneyed interests. On January 6th, when the insurrection happened, I came on the air and I said, I want to know who funded this. I want the moneyed interests. I want the people who paid for the buses. I want the people who paid for all of the organizing that went into this. I want them because they did this. They're behind this. And we're not there. And that comes from us demanding it. Our problems are us. We're divided. We need to figure out how to come together. Just my thoughts. Love to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got lots to get to, lots to talk about. If you miss any of the program, make sure you download the podcast. Always there, always available at thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
The mercury is rising all across Western Europe.
Extreme heat in Europe smashes records, sparks wildfires, and water rationing. Severe U.S. heat wave killed thousands of cattle. Plus,
madness is coming, and all we can do is try to prepare for it as best we can.
Right-wing Supreme Court majority poised to hand down the most consequential environmental ruling in decades.
All of those consequences and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
The things that we're starting to see now become much worse, and we get extremes that we haven't even seen before.
It's going to get worse?
Much worse.
Who asked you? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, sweltering heat in Europe, here in the U.S. Cattle dying, people dying. This is not good.
No, it most definitely is not, and it is very unusual. In Europe, an historic heat wave is blanketing Europe from London to the Mediterranean, with temperatures 20 to 30 degrees above normal, shattering all-time temperature records for the month of June and sparking wildfires in Spain, Germany, and France. Southern France hit a record high of 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
The extreme heat is impacting electricity generation in southern France, where several nuclear plants were already offline after widespread corrosion problems were discovered in critical systems. France 24 reports that other nuclear plants have also been forced to curtail output because rivers that are used to cool the nuclear reactors are warming earlier and faster than normal.
So the river water is too hot to cool the nuclear power plant.
Yes.
Not good.
In Italy, the heat and historic drought have triggered a water crisis. Parts of northern Italy have seen no rain for more than 3 months, wilting crops and reducing output from hydroelectric dams. But worse, Italy's largest river, the legendary Po River, is literally drying up. Towns in the north have begun water rationing. But a bit of better news, Europe also set new records for solar power production. In Germany, solar supplied more than 60% of its electricity in the height of the heat wave.
So there's that.
It's the opposite situation in India and Bangladesh, where army troops have been called out to rescue thousands of people stranded by deadly floods. An unusually intense monsoon dumped more than 3 feet of rain in 24 hours.
3 feet of rain in 24 hours?
Yes, nearly 120 people are confirmed killed by floods and landslides as we go to air. Millions of homes are underwater, and this latest round of catastrophic flooding comes less than a month after extreme rainfall submerged entire towns. Studies show that climate change increases the odds of extreme weather events like droughts and deluges. Climate scientists warn that the unusually early arrival of extreme heat is a sign of what is to come with man-made climate change, with temperatures from August moving up the calendar to June.
With what is to come from man-made climate change, I would say it's already here.
Here in the U.S., officials in Kansas say the sudden onset of intense heat last week killed at least 2,000 cattle. In southern Arizona, firefighters have saved the precious telescopes at the Kitt Peak National Observatory from the massive Contreras fire. It's just one of several major fires fueled by the excessive heat and dry conditions in the Southwest. In other news, the American Medical Association has issued a new statement declaring climate change a public health crisis that, quote, threatens the health and well-being of all people.
Good.
The new policy specifically mobilizes the AMA to advocate for policies that limit global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius and will help the U.S. cut emissions to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. And finally, a heads up. The right-wing U.S. Supreme Court majority is poised to hand down what could be an incredibly consequential environmental ruling. West Virginia versus EPA is a lawsuit brought by Republican attorneys general over a coal pollution rule that never went into effect. It is a pretext in Republicans' years-long scheme to get the court to strip the EPA of authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. In 2008, the court ruled that the EPA can and must regulate climate pollution, but the new right-wing supermajority may break precedent with long-reaching consequences that could curtail all future pollution regulations. Slate court reporter Mark Joseph Stern on a recent broadcast warned,
how could it possibly be that the Supreme Court will rule on a regulation that does not yet exist, that may in fact never exist? And the answer is that the usual rules about actually taking a live controversy do not seem to apply when the conservative supermajority really wants to kneecap the Biden administration's regulatory agenda.
Right. Nothing has changed except the makeup of the corrupted, stolen, and packed U.S. Supreme Court. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So last week, it was reported that the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, and the legislative leaders had reached an impasse over negotiations for their 2020, over a special session that I guess not happening. And they got there's a lot of work that's not being done. And you go, how do you just go home? How do you not get your job done? And, as I was talking to people, friends in the area, they're going, we got to put some pressure on folks to get back to work, get the things we need done, because there's funding for education, there's funding for our public sector workers that need to get done. There's things need to get done. I'm here to share some thoughts on what's going on in Minnesota. I've asked Brian Aldies to come talk with us. Brian's the Secretary-Treasurer of Teamsters Local 320. TeamstersLocal320.org is their website. He's here to share some thoughts on what's going on in Minnesota. Brian, thanks for taking some time for us.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's great to be here, and it's great to talk about this. It's great to talk about issues that affect, regular people, and especially working men and women in the public sector in Minnesota.
So what's going on? Where's the problem here?
Well, the problem is our elected officials in the House and the Senate in Minnesota didn't do their jobs. Minnesota was sitting on close to a $10 billion budget surplus. And, the House, which is led by Democrats, and the Senate, which has a Republican majority, failed to reach an agreement on a supplemental budget that, quite frankly, which this epic failure negatively impacts all Minnesotans, no matter what they do for a living, or if they're retired or they're public employees. This is, Rick, if you or I went to work and we made a mess of our work, we'd be unemployed.
Yeah, well, that doesn't seem to matter for some of our legislative friends. Because, look, there are some people who run for office solely to gum up the system and make sure things don't work. And I've been frustrated about that over the years, and this appears to be one of those scenarios. So walk me through some of what we're talking about, of what's not being done. I know that there's education funding that's on the table. What's that going to mean come the fall if nothing happens? If nothing gets done between now and the fall, what's that going to mean for kids returning to school?
Yeah, well, I mean, what was sitting on the table for E-12 education in Minnesota was an additional $1 billion. I believe Minneapolis Public Schools had cut their budget by, upwards of and beyond of $10 million. So class sizes are going to grow. We're going to have less staffing and less programs for our kids. At Local 320, we represent almost 11,000 public employees across the entire state of Minnesota. We have members in every single county across the entire state. And I just want to explain a little bit about how this affects public sector workers in Minnesota. It was $1 billion for E-12 education. it was almost $150 million over a 2-year period for our courts in the state of Minnesota, which has greater than 10,000 cases backlogged because of the pandemic, and the state's not going to be able to meet their constitutional mandates when it comes to public defense. In Minnesota, we are losing billions of dollars in federal funding because we're not funding, additional road and bridge projects. Minnesota is one of only 6 states that taxes Social Security income for our retirees and elderly. And what was on the table was to eliminate that tax. Cost of living adjustments were not met or increased. We have greater than 8% inflation,
right,
for our public pensioners. So this this affects everybody. The schools our public school systems are going to be a mess. There would be a lack of funding for local government aid and county program aid. This is just I've never seen anything like it. It's like I said to one leader in the Senate. I said, "What was the problem? Was there too much money on the table for you to figure this out?"
Yeah, no, it sounds to me, look, Minnesota has always been one of those states that always seemed fairly sane to me, because you had, as I understood it, you had kind of a consensus that you funded education, you funded your public services, you seem to be going in the right direction. So what's changed over these last couple of years that's put this in jeopardy at this moment? Because this doesn't sound like the Minnesota that I know.
No, I mean we were all surprised, but to be honest, every single seat in our House and Senate is up. Their terms are up this fall, so everybody's running for election. The Senate Republicans, I think, are the ones that walked away from the negotiations, and I think what they're banking on is the trifecta. Winning the governor's race, taking control of the House, keeping control in the Senate, and then Republicans alone will do what they see fit with Minnesota's budget.
And what does that mean when you say they see fit? I mean, is it like I see here in my state of Pennsylvania, or I've seen in other states where it's slash and burn, privatization, it's gutting wages? What does that look like in Minnesota terms?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about protecting business, and limiting the services that our government provides. It's like, hey, give the money back to the wealthy. They don't, they need it. But the working men and women in the public sector, they don't. Retirees. One of the things that Republicans in this state wanted to do is they wanted to privatize the public pension system. They wanted to turn it into for example, it's a defined benefit right now, but they wanted to turn it into a defined contribution program. And I mean, we all know what bad pensions look like, right?
Yeah.
Look, we're all working people.
No, and what this says to me, Brian, and this is one of those moments where I think the folks in Minnesota have to make decisions. I think people across the country listening to this and on our other affiliates have to make the same kind of choices when evaluating political leaders on which policies we're going to move towards. Is it the same kind of failed conservative policies that have gotten us into the mess that we're in now? Or are you going to have a government that's going to fund programs to help, a government that's going to help people and create good jobs that are going to sustain families? Because these investments that you're talking about, investments in education, investments in our court system, investments in retiree cost of living adjustments, these are all things that benefit our community because they reverberate through the community and create jobs in your local area. So those investments don't just provide a good for the things that they're doing, but they also have a reverberation effect through the local economy that I think does doubly good.
You're right, and look, I mean, I believe I have a responsibility as a labor leader to educate members, but we also need to be out there educating the public, and we need to be educating employers. And one thing that we like to take a look at when we negotiate our large public sector contracts is what the economic impact is if we fund our public sector workers, our public sector services, and we give people pay raises. Rick, if I give you a 3% or a 5% pay raise, there's an impact to that. And that 3% is going to generate revenue at the bank. It's going to generate revenue at the grocery store, the clothing store, the cell phone store. And so we have to show people, look, one, elections matter. And two, when we fund our public services, we are funding our communities, because as workers, we have to spend the money that we earn, because we don't always have enough to save. We have to spend it. So there's an economic impact to that. We generate revenue. We generate tax dollars. We keep businesses, local businesses in business. So really there's two messages, right? I mean, we got to communicate and educate, and we have to remind people that there are consequences to elections.
Absolutely. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Brian Aldiss. He's Secretary Treasurer of Teamsters Local 320 in Minnesota. TeamstersLocal320.org, their website, if you want to check out the work that they do. Brian, this is one of those mobilization moments, one of those things where we got to get people active, engaged, pushing, demanding, because I don't think our elected leaders hear enough from us in a unified voice. So what do we want people to do in this moment? Look, because when I talk to people want to fund education. They want their government to work and function. They want these kind of things to happen. And when I talk to workers about, contracts and saying, look, if every worker had a contract that had a cost of living adjustment for inflation, to where if inflation's 8%, you're going to see your wages go up, so you're not so badly harmed by it. They say that's not a bad idea. We should do that. These are the kind of things we should be fighting for, I think. So activating, engaging people to move in that direction seems like a pretty sensible idea to me.
Yeah, I mean, we it's important. I mean, you got to put a lot of time, energy, and resources into mobilizing the membership. And in order to mobilize people and to get people involved, we got to be out there in the field. I mean, we got to be having, one-on-one and face-to-face conversations with people, and talking about. We got to be talking about these issues. We've got to talk about elections and why they have consequences. We've got to move the conversation from talking about Democrats and Republicans to, issues that affect workers. We've got to drive our membership. We have national right to work in the public sector. So, they've already, they've tried to handicap us there. But, we maintain good membership. We're engaging members in the political process. We run phone banks. We encourage people to get out and knock doors with us. We encourage people to communicate with their elected officials. We take this year we took over 200 members to our annual lobby day on the Hill. It was virtual, but we make sure our members are communicating with elected officials as well.
Yeah, and is this a moment we need to do more of that? Should people be calling their legislators in Minnesota? Should be calling the governor? Is this a governor problem? Is this a legislator problem? Who should we be talking to?
Look, Joint Council 32 has endorsed Governor Walz for his reelection bid. Governor Walz is he's a former teacher himself, former serviceman. I believe that he does a good job and he cares about working people. What we've encouraged our members to do through mass communication is to get a hold of leaders in the Senate, the Senate Majority Leader, committee chairs in the Senate, which are Republican controlled. And, hey, flood their phone lines, flood their emails, let them know that, hey, you can't fail Minnesota like this. We are not one of those states. We are, we're Minnesota. Minnesota looks nice. We've got great public services and roads and bridges and parks and schools. I mean, hell, they're failing higher education too. They want to fail everybody. But that's what we're doing is we're getting our members out to communicate with the leaders in the Senate.
Good stuff. For all of our listeners listening on KTNF AM 950 there in Minneapolis, by all means, get on it and call your legislator, call your senators, call all around the state. Make sure that they know that you're paying attention. But Brian, I appreciate the thoughts. I wish you the best. I hope you'll come back and share some good news as this continues down the road.
Good to be with you, Rick. Take care of yourself.
Great stuff. Brian Aldi's Secretary-Treasurer there of Teamsters Local 320. TeamstersLocal320.org, the website. Check out the work that they're doing. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. What are your thoughts? Should we be funding this stuff, or are you on the divided government? Let's shut everything down. I got some MAGA friends who think shut everything down is the way to go. I think that's a failure. Back after this.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the need for education funding, by all means. I'm looking at Georgia Senate candidate Herschel Walker. Evidently was doing a radio interview, said, evidently believes there's 52 states. He claims Georgia is the worst state in the country to live in. He said, if you don't believe in the country, leave and go somewhere else. If it's the worst state, why are you here? Why don't you leave, go to another? There's 51 more states that you can go to. So I guess that there's 52 states, he thinks. Good for him. Good for him. It is what it is. But good news today. I want to get to this. The Senate yesterday voted 64-34 to move forward on a gun bill. 14 Republicans voted to advance the piece of legislation, along with all 50 members of the Democratic Party. Roy Blunt of Missouri, Richard Burr of North Carolina, Sherry Mercapito of West Virginia, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Susan Collins of Maine, John Cornyn, Texas, Joni Ernst, Iowa, Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, Lisa Murkowski, Alaska, Rob Portman, Ohio, Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, and Todd Young of Indiana. They all voted in the affirmative for the bipartisan piece of legislation that is being, touted as the massive change that we're going to need. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act is what they're calling it. And what it's going to do, what they're saying is it's going to have some background checks for people under 21. They're going to look for mental health issues. Going to be a couple of days to look back. There's going to be a cooling off period. That'll give people the ability to, under 21, to look into their past for any mental health issues, anything like that. It's going to give the courts the ability to take people's guns away if they threaten themselves or others. I guess they're closing what they call the boyfriend loophole, that if you beat up your girl, if you're a wife beater or a girlfriend beater, if you're one of those degenerates, you have you have your ability to buy a gun taken away. You can evidently get it back down the road, but it's a one-time thing. So if you're a multi offender, that we don't want you having a gun anyway. There will be now, I guess for the first time, some kind of a criminal statute in place on the federal level banning gun trafficking and straw purchases. That's a big step forward, something the gun manufacturing crowd not happy with, as I understand. It's going to clarify who a federal arms dealer is. There will be a register. So I'm sure, again, my we can't register nothing for crowd going to be unhappy. There's money for mental health in this. They're going to build a nationwide mental health system out of this, about $11 billion in that. Also, there's going to be, I guess, a series of telehealth consultant stuff, some new stuff that is going to help. I'm not against it. They're going to spend money on, increased funding for the Stop School Violence program that they think is going to be helpful. All of this, I think, are steps in the right direction. Is it enough? We're going to find out. I know some people who are going to argue, no, it's not enough. I know some people are going to argue, oh my God, it's the end of humanity. It's a slippery slope, all this. I'm surprised 14 Republicans voted for it. I am not surprised that House Republicans are formally opposing the bipartisan gun package, and they are pushing the Republican caucus to vote against it. We'll see how the House votes. It looks like it's probably going to pass. It may end up on Joe Biden's desk. We will see. But for me, it's one of these weird moments, especially today, as you find out that the police chief in Uvalde has been placed on administrative leave, and because all of this stuff going on about the response of the police department there, and I still say what I said from the beginning. I think one of the cops shot one of the kids. I think that's what the video footage is going to show. I believe that. Am I saying that's what happened? No, but that's what I believe probably happened. But for me, the what we need to start pushing back against and New York Times had a really good piece on this. This fantasy idea that the good guy with a gun is always going to stop the bad guy. They did a look at the mass shootings over the last 20 years, and they came up with 433 active shootings over that period. 249, they said, ended before the police arrived. 184 ended after police arrived. So they broke them down in before police arrived, after police arrived. Where it ended before the police arrived, 113 times the attacker just left. 72 times the attacker died by suicide, and 42 times they were subdued by people there. 22 times a bystander shot the attacker. So in all these times, the good guy with a gun scenario played out in a very small number of times. 12 times it was a citizen that shot them, 7 times a security guard, 3 times an off-duty police officer. So we were talking out of 249 times, 12 times a good guy with a gun, so to speak. And in a couple of these cases, the good guy with a gun actually got shot himself and killed because, confusion, police didn't realize, oh, that's a good guy with a gun, not just somebody with a gun. This is one of those things that I think we really need to start pushing back on this frame more often, because we love that Rambo fantasy that we're gonna jump to action, but the sad reality is it doesn't play out as often, as infrequently as we want to believe. Just kind of one of those thoughts. Maybe something to look at. But hey, it's a good start. Something got passed, and we'll see if it actually gets signed. Love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. This is good thing, bad thing. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a moment. Never miss an episode. You can get that wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1969. That was the day that the Cuyahoga River, which winds its way through Cleveland, Ohio, caught on fire. Cleveland was once the 6th largest city in the nation. During the early 20th century, the city had a booming steel industry. Clevelander John D. Rockefeller made the city a leader in oil refining. But after World War II, industries left strong union cities like Cleveland and Detroit. These jobs moved south and overseas, where wealthy industrialists could exploit workers in markets with weak labor protections. As a result, Cleveland fell on hard times. During the 1960s, the city lost 150,000 residents. As jobs left town, so did the workers. The once proud factories that lined the banks of the Cuyahoga River had brought jobs to the city, but they also pumped pollution into the waterway. When a passing train put off sparks, the river oozing with oil and debris caught fire. It was not the first time that the river ignited. Time magazine posted dramatic photos of the burning river, although the photos were actually from an earlier blaze. The pictures helped to fuel the growing environmental movement. They gave momentum to the passage of the Clean Water Act. The Cuyahoga was not the only urban river impacted by industry. The Time article described how, quote, Omaha's meat packers filled the Missouri River with animal grease balls as big as oranges. Today, one of Cleveland's breweries sells a popular Burning River Pale Ale. The Burning River is part of the history and the folklore of the city.
Burn on, big river, burn on. Burn on, big river.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I never dreamed of growing up to be a political activist commentator, but here I am, and it worked out pretty well for me. I've been lucky enough to have a voice in public matters and eke out a modest living running my mouth as an independent populist agitator. Still, I have to confess to the sin of job envy. Not in the sense of being resentful, but regretful about my own inability to lift the trade of journalistic commentary to the heights attained by a small, feisty collection of unique public opinionators, political cartoonists. In framing issues and rallying people to think and act, these journalists have an unfair advantage over us mere word crafters. They can literally draw a picture to make their point. They reach masses viscerally as well as cerebrally, and visceral usually outpunches cerebral. Editorial cartooning is a profession made up largely of progressive mavericks who enter the social, political, cultural fray with an abundance of anti-establishment audacity, an eye for irony, fondness for the underdog, and an ability to laugh at absurdity, plus artistic talent. Because cartooning is an expression of the human spirit that's been irrepressible since cave drawings, generation after generation of pen and ink champions of democracy blossomed. The general public's appreciation and demand for the cartoonist's unblinking honesty and satire have never flagged, even increasing whenever the artists come under public assault by autocrats, plutocrats, screwballs, and assorted other censors. These graphic editorial artists matter. Again and again, they've roused the public to rise up and put down corporate and political scoundrels, incrementally advancing our nation's democratic possibilities. As in the natural world, though, even the most beneficial creatures can be driven to extinction. This is Jim Hightower saying, check your own local newspaper. Are your favorite cartoonists still there?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So still lots of interesting commentary on the hearing yesterday, the January 6th hearing, the fourth one. We now find out, hey, they're going to kind of push off the next one, the later ones, because more information. And you go, how much more can there be? It's been like 18 months you've been digging. Evidently more coming in, breaking news, breaking stuff coming. And I think it's going to get worse. I think a lot of people are surprised just how bad this looks for the former guy. I think really, I mean, and as I've been saying all through this, these aren't hippie liberals. This isn't Adam Schiff or Swalwell or Nancy Pelosi. This is any of them. These are the very best people. These are the Trump inner circle. These were people who were in the documentary that didn't know there was a documentary being shot. Yes. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But here to share some thoughts on, well, the January 6th hearings and, well, where this might take us. I've asked Mike Sezon to come talk with us. Mike is a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. He focuses on democracy and government reform. You want to check out their website, americanprogress.org. Mike, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me here to talk about this important topic.
So let's start with the yesterday's hearing. I thought yesterday by far most compelling. I thought most emotional, most grabbing, most jaw-dropping, biggest bombshells. I thought Rusty Bowers was the guy who, at least for me, connected the most, because I always view him as a legislative monster, somebody that I wouldn't agree with politically on anything. But in that moment, he stepped up to the time and, well, he did the right thing.
That's right. He essentially said he was putting country over party, right? And that he was putting the Constitution and his oath to the Constitution over partisanship. And he was not going to give in to the demands of Donald Trump and the MAGA extremists who wanted him to be part of the big lie and to throw valid election results out. So, yeah, my hat is off to Rusty Bowers and the other election officials who testified alongside him from Georgia. They did the right thing, and they stood up to protect our elections.
Now, he did the right thing in the moment. Now, here's the weird thing for me. After watching his testimony, and this is bizarre to me, and maybe you can help me here because I'm struggling in this moment. And I'm struggling with this mentality. I've never viewed any politician in hero worship terms. I've never agreed with anyone 100% of the time. I don't even agree with myself 100% of the time. So, there's a weird thing here. I watched Rusty Bowers give an emotional, heart-wrenching testimony, probably one of the most heart-wrenching that I've seen in Congress ever. About how his family was abused, about how his words have been misused, about how he's been pressured, and how life has just been a living hell because of this scenario that the former guy put him in. And yet, remarkably, if Donald Trump were to run again, this guy who was almost in tears over what Trump did to him, he'd vote for him again. Am I hearing that right?
You heard it right. And when I heard it this morning, when I read it, I had to triple check it to say, what the heck is this? Is this for real? I had to scour the article to make sure that the headline was right. He said it. I was incredibly disappointed that Rusty Bowers could still support Donald Trump after Donald Trump literally, as you said, put Bowers' life in jeopardy and the lives of his family members. So it's a head scratcher for me. I don't understand why this is like such a cult-like loyalty to Donald Trump. And look, I agree that although I'm a proud progressive, there have been many times I've criticized Democratic presidents, Democratic lawmakers, consistently. No one is perfect. And there are times I would consider voting for somebody else other than a Democrat on the ticket, especially if that Democrat was trying to overthrow valid elections and was a crook. So I still don't understand why Bowers would say that, but I do thank him for at least stepping up when he needed to protect our elections.
Are you as surprised as I am? And I look at Mike Pence, and I know there are a lot of people who are in this day we're still looking for heroes, and I don't use that word often. Because I don't think there are many left. I don't think there are many. I think it's a special word we should use infrequently, but we seem to throw it around a lot. But here recently, we've been trying to find one in this, and Mike Pence seems to be someone we're trying to always, I think this, I give him no points. I give him no credit, and I'll tell you why. He was somebody who served in Congress for a number of years. He knows how the system works. Viscerally, the second someone came to him and said, Mike, we've got this scheme, and this scheme goes like this, he should have known by being part of the process for years that, no, you can't do this. I've done this. This is not how it works. I was there during tumultuous times before. This isn't how it works. He should have, in the moment, stood up no and exposed it in the moment, and not a month of looking for the potato man, looking for a judge to lay himself across a road, looking for mother to bail him out, or whatever he had to come with to find the courage to say no. I'm sorry, no points for Mike Pence.
I hear you. I have some of those same reactions as well, and I especially didn't believe that, as his staffers were testifying, that he never wavered, that Pence always knew he had to follow the Constitution and was not going to throw out the valid results. Well, then why was he consulting so many different people and saying it was a tough decision and having to ask Dan Quayle, of all people? I mean, some of it doesn't ring true. And I certainly don't like the fact that Pence is being held up as such a hero. But I will say, ultimately, he did make the decision to count the votes and to uphold the valid election. And I have to give him some credit for that, because honestly, Rick, up until that point, I was very scared about where Pence was going to land, because he'd always been such a lapdog for Trump, right? He'd always been completely loyal to Trump, had lied for Trump. And I thought, well, this time should probably be the same. But at least he showed a little bit of backbone. I don't know if you want to give him credit for anything, at least a little bit of backbone, but I'm going to give him that. All
right, you could give him backbone. I'm not. Look, courage comes standing in the moment and doing the right thing at the moment. And I look at, as much as as much as I look at Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State from Georgia, and all of the things that he did as Secretary of State with all the purging that went on before the election. Look, they tried to steal Georgia well before the first vote was cast. They did everything they could do to ensure Trump won Georgia. The one thing he would not do is reach into the couch cushions to try and locate and find 11,000 votes. And I give him credit for that. And he came out in the moment and said, no, this is wrong. I'm not going to stand up. I'm not going to stand. I give him some points because in the moment he stood up and fought back. Pence, I'm sorry. I'm not there. I'm struggling with that.
I hear you. I hear your argument. I won't try to convince you otherwise, but you raise some very valid points about Mike Pence. And, but look, we are lucky that other officials stood up, especially at the state levels, right, and really pushed back against this concerted scheme to threaten them, to punish them, and they're still under threats. And that's why we see so many of them resigning around the country. At the same time, we're seeing MAGA extremists running for important office, being nominated for statewide office, like in Pennsylvania, Doug Mastriano, of course, for governor. And so I am happy that at least we have some Republicans who are, I hesitate to call them pro-democracy, but that's what I'll call them in this instance, where they're willing to stand up to protect valid elections, because we're going to need them in the months and years ahead.
No, I mean, look, the hearing yesterday came out that, as much as I'm not a fan of Brian Cutler, the speaker here in Pennsylvania, look, he knew enough to stop taking Rudy Giuliani's calls. Good for him. That's something. Congratulations. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Michael Suzanne. He's a senior fellow over at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is their website. Michael focuses on democracy and government reform there at the Center for American Progress. So, for me, the stories of the last two witnesses, the poll workers, these are just people, the average citizens, people like you and me. I would argue people better than you and me. These are folks who, they don't make much doing this. They put themselves on the line, and because they had the audacity to stand up in a moment, their lives were basically ruined by the most powerful man on the planet, and for no damn good reason.
Right. That was probably the most emotional testimony for me yesterday, was the election worker, and of course her mother was there as well. We saw her deposition testimony from Lady Ruby. And these are people who really just tried to follow the law and help to make sure that elections are carried out properly. They have a proud history in their family of doing that, and their lives have been completely turned upside down. They're afraid to go outside now. They're afraid to say their names publicly. Their lives have really been almost destroyed, and at the direction essentially of a president of the United States and his lawyer. And it's despicable. We can't ever allow this to happen again. And you're right. Those are the heroes on the front lines, right? These are the workers who are willing to, in their communities, in their polling places, in their states, are willing to help carry out the machinery of elections. And by and large, they do it completely above board. Doesn't matter which party that they might favor. They're doing it to help our democracy. And those frontline heroes deserve our respect and our protection, quite frankly.
No, I'm absolutely. Now, Benny Thompson brought up yesterday in the hearing that, the threat obviously is continuing because, as you pointed out a minute ago, you have this concerted effort by the Steve Bannons of the world to spend a lot of money, the RNC, the Republican machine, spending a lot of money, not just on poll watchers, which are highly political, but on the poll workers, the people like Miss Ruby and others, to make those positions political and to use the machine against the voters. This kind of weaponization of our voting machinery, this is scary stuff. This is, well, I don't know. I hate to go back to the 30s, but it seems kind of, in the Benito Mastriano kind of way, fascistic.
It is. It's pretty darn close, and that's why our democracy is in a real danger zone right now. And people, your listeners and your viewers, really have to understand that. I think most of them probably do by listening to you. But this is a continuing conspiracy. It's not in the rearview mirror. We've got MAGA extremists running for major positions around the country. We've got the MAGA extremists, like you said, who are taking these election worker positions, volunteer positions, because actually 1/4 of election workers who have worked for many years in these jobs have resigned in the past couple of years because of what they've undergone. We have the state voter suppression and state election sabotage laws that have been passed in the last couple of years. And so this scheme is really ongoing, and we need to all stay really vigilant about it. We really have to make sure that we can't allow the MAGA forces to take over that sort of machinery. We're one of the few democracies, one of the few countries that still allows partisans to run elections in many cases. Most countries have nonpartisan governing boards or nonpartisan people who are overseeing the election machinery and the mechanics of elections. We are a real exception there, and it poses therefore some of these dangers. So we've really got to stay vigilant.
Yeah, I mean, this is that moment where if you haven't been a part of the machine before, this is where we need good, decent, honest people to step forward. The silent majority to find, we hear about that all the time. We need the silent majority to finally speak up and start shouting down the extremists. I mean, at some point, we hear take our country back. We hear that a lot. It's time to start taking back this country in a way that most of us recognize from the past, because I don't think a lot of us like where we're heading.
You're right, and for people who are angered by what they're seeing and are worried, and they're saying, "What can I do?" And there are lots of things that that we can all do collectively. But one of the things you can do is you can be a local hero by volunteering at your local polling place, working there. There are job openings at these places, and uphold the law. No matter whether you're progressive or conservative, whatever, you got to follow the law. We don't want any political party trying to take over elections or throw valid elections results out. But one of the most heartening threads I saw on Twitter today was a long thread with people saying that they want to honor the heroes that we heard yesterday at the hearing, like Lady Ruby. They're going to go now be election workers or election volunteers in their community, and that's a way to honor the heroes and to become a hero actually as well.
Yeah, so if anything comes out of these hearings, and the last line of questioning I've got for you, what you think is going to come out of this, if anything comes out of it, maybe that kind of activism, that kind of renewed belief in public service, call to public service, however you want to put that kind of push to back into the public sphere, maybe if that's what comes out of this, this will have been positive. But let me ask you this, though. What do you think's coming out of this? I mean, is this something you hear the Jim Jordans of the world saying nobody's paying attention because everyone's worried about gas prices? Yet, most people that I know seem to be paying attention. The polling seems to be, not very good for the former guy. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I've been very pleasantly surprised by the reaction. I wasn't sure what to expect going into this, and there were a lot of naysayers, but a lot of Americans are watching, and they're talking about it, and they're connecting the dots. And the dots are being connected for them by the very powerful committee presentations. And more information is now coming forward to the committee. As you alluded to earlier, the committee, after tomorrow's hearing, is going to put a pause on the subsequent hearings because they're receiving so much information now that they need time to go through it. And so there's a lot of good coming out of this, and the poll results already show that more than a majority of Americans, actually one poll showed up to 60% of Americans, want Trump and his MAGA allies to be accountable if there is lawbreaking, if that's what's going to be shown here. They do want accountability. They do stand for the proposition that no president is above the law. I think almost every American has traditionally believed in that concept. Not as much now, but I still think the majority of Americans believe that no one should be above the law, not even the president, and everyone wants their right to vote and their right to choose their leaders to be protected. So I'm pretty optimistic about where this is going. The national debate is being shaped by this right now. How many hearts and minds it changes ultimately, not sure, but let's let the committee do its work. Let's follow it closely. Let's see where it leads.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm not so concerned about this November. I'm concerned about the November, the next, and on down the road. This is about much more than just one election cycle. This is about the future. This is about what we leave our children and future generations. And ultimately, I look at these hearings and I wonder in 100 years what historians are going to look back on and think of this era as they think of what we're doing and how we respond to this. Because like it or not, we are most certainly living history.
We are, and I hope this is going to be seen as a sad, short chapter for our democracy.
There you go. Mike, I appreciate the time. Great talking with you, my friend.
Okay, you as well.
Good stuff. Mike Suzanne, Senior Fellow there at the Center for American Progress. He focuses on democracy and government reform. Make sure you check out their website, AmericanProgress.org. Love to hear your thoughts. You paying attention? Are these hearings as compelling as I believe they are? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1977. The eyes of the British labor movement were turned to the Grunwick Film Labor Processing Laboratories in northwest London. Members of trade unions participated in a large demonstration at the factory. Miners from as far away as South Wales traveled to show their solidarity. As police tried to bring in buses of scabs, the picketers and the police clashed. The bloody scenes played on television sets across the country. The workers at the plant had been on strike since late summer of 1976. They were demanding the right of union recognition. The majority of the workers were women from Southern Asia. The company intentionally hired these women in an effort to keep wages low. One striker explained, "Imagine how humiliating it was for us, particularly for older women, to be working and to overhear the employer say to a younger English girl, 'You don't want to come and work here, love. We won't be able to pay you the sort of wages that'll keep you here,' while we had to work there because we were trapped." The strike had started when a man was fired for working too slowly. A small group of his co-workers walked off the job in protest. From there, the strike grew, catching the attention of the broader British labor movement. This strike marked an important turning point, as British trade unionists supported a predominantly South Asian workforce. Earlier strikes by South Asian workers had not received similar support. Despite this show of solidarity, the company remained entrenched, battling vehemently against the recognition of the union. The women at the plant fought for 2 years, until the strike was called off. The end of the protracted battle was seen as a major blow to labor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. You know, I got to tell you, I'm still struggling with the Rusty Bowers thing. But the weird thing is, look, I know so many people who will go on about how Trump didn't do the right thing, and how he's divisive, and how maybe we need to move along, and maybe the country needs a break, and maybe there's other leaders. But then I'd vote for it. Billy Barr. I mean, the same thing. And this is the weird thing for me. I don't understand this cult-like mentality. And I guess this is part of the difference between liberals and conservatives. Conservatives very, very black and white thinking, very yes, no, very loyal, disloyal, absolutists. And either you support them or you don't. For us or against us. The kind of Bush frame stuff. Whereas as liberals are a lot more gray area. I live my life in a lot of gray areas. There are very few hard absolutes. And especially in the political world, when you're talking about so many other inputs, there are no politicians. There is not one politician. There's some politicians I like. I like Bernie Sanders. I've liked him for years. He used to be a friend of the show. We used to have him on all the time when he was a congressman. Not perfect. We used to have a number of people on over the years that I liked. Phil Hare was a good friend for during the time when he was in Congress. Didn't agree on everything. As I've said, I don't agree with myself 100% of the time. But yet this blind faith loyalty to a guy who really was a con man. I mean, it's really remarkable. And it makes me think back to, some of the things that, you learned back in history class about the 30s, and about, a generation falling under the spell of these leaders like Hitler or Mussolini, and this kind of cult like following. It's interesting to watch in real time, because, while some, I've had a couple say, well, I just like him because he makes people mad, stirs stuff up. And there are people who just like stirring stuff up. And I on a certain level, understand that. On a whole nother level, when you're talking about, how do we make better lives? How do we put better opportunities in place? How do we leave a better future for our children? I don't know how you go to a con man. I don't know how you go to somebody who's bankrupted almost everything he's touched. I don't know how you do that. But I guess it comes back down to the narratives and the stories you tell yourself. I guess it comes back down to the image that you have of that person. Very interesting times. Now, will he run again? I'm sure he's going to try. I'm sure he's going to keep pushing, but there's going to be a pivot here. Mark the words, and I've been saying this for a while. The Republicans are going to have to throw him under the bus. The more that this stuff comes out, the more Rusty Bowers we hear, even though I'll vote for him again. Stop and think about this for a minute. They literally made his life a living hell. I mean, the stories he told about, just the abuse his family took. And then can you imagine what his wife, I can't imagine what my wife would say. Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's fascinating when you stop and you sit back and you think about it. The lengths that they'll go to. Because policy-wise, there's still nothing there. It's sheer power is what I keep coming back to. The fact that he won the election, the fact that they can exert this kind of pressure. The fact that a generation on the extreme right is under the spell. Is there hope? Is there a savior? Is there a way in reverse? I don't know, but I do foresee, as I said, I do foresee Bus meet Donald Trump. They're going to throw him under. because they have to save themselves. At some point, it's going to have to happen. The F channel is going to have to do it because, oh, by the way, they're probably going to get sued out of existence at some point very soon by the good folks at Dominion Voting Systems. Because, oh, by the way, these hearings not doing all that great for their case. So lots of that. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com, that's where you go to get the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Subscribe to it, share it, like it, comment, all of that stuff. We appreciate it. If you missed any of it, make sure you get it. Also, you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.